Never forget those who were loyal. This story will hit you hard. A black loyal servant gave 10 years of his life to a king, but one tiny mistake, and the king ordered him thrown to wild dogs. What happened next shocked the entire kingdom. You won't believe how the dogs reacted. Stay till the end and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful life lessons. Once upon a time, in a faraway land where kingdoms stretched across golden deserts and towering mountains, lived a powerful and feared king. This king, though wise in battle and admired by many, was known for his unpredictable temper and harsh punishments. In his court, silence often ruled. People watched every word they said, afraid that one wrong sentence might cost them everything. This king had a strange and cruel habit. He kept 10 wild, vicious dogs in an iron cage at the back of the palace. These weren't ordinary dogs, they were massive, trained killers who hadn't seen kindness in years. Whenever a servant made a mistake, the king would throw them to these beasts as punishment. No trial, no second chances. In this same kingdom lived a black loyal servant named David. He had worked in the palace for 10 full years, faithfully handling the king's schedule, managing affairs, and making sure peace remained in the court. He never complained, never asked for a raise, and always put the king's needs above his own. One day, during a royal meeting, the king asked his advisors for their opinion on a new law. David, believing honesty was the best policy, gave his thoughts politely, but the king didn't like what he heard. Perhaps David's words touched a nerve, or maybe the king simply woke up angry that day. The king stood up, face red with fury, and roared, "How dare you speak against me? Guards, throw him to the dogs." Gasps echoed through the hall. The other servants lowered their heads. No one dared to speak in David's defense. David, heartbroken and stunned, fell to his knees. "Your Majesty," he pleaded, "I have served you loyally for 10 years. Please, grant me just 10 days before you feed me to the dogs." The king scoffed, then nodded. "Fine, 10 days, and then you die." Everyone thought David was done for, but no one could guess what he would do next. The guards locked David in his quarters, but he wasn't panicking. That night he made an unusual request. He asked to speak with Malik, the gruff old man who looked after the king's deadly dogs. When Malik appeared, David bowed and said, "I have 10 days to live. Please let me serve the dogs until then." Malik raised an eyebrow. "Serve the dogs? You're about to be their dinner." "I know," David nodded. "But I want to feed them, bathe them, clean their cages. Just let me be with them." Malik, who had seen many prisoners scream and cry before their fate, was surprised. But something in David's eyes made him agree. From that day forward, David began his strange new task. He brought meat and fresh water to the dogs. He cleaned their fur, spoke to them gently, and treated them with kindness, something they hadn't felt in years. At first, the dogs snarled and snapped, but David didn't give up. Day after day, his soft voice calmed them. He touched them with care, and slowly, the beasts began to change. By the 5th day, the once bloodthirsty animals began wagging their tails when they saw him. By the 8th day, they licked his hands. By the 10th day, they rested their heads on his lap. The same beasts that had torn men to shreds were now his friends. 10 days later, the entire palace gathered in the grand courtyard. The king sat on his throne, watching with a smug smile. "Bring him," he ordered. David was led to the iron gate where the dogs waited. "Throw him in," the king shouted. The crowd gasped in horror as the gate opened and David stepped inside. Instead of attacking, the 10 wild dogs ran to him, tails wagging, eyes soft. One licked his face. Another lay down beside him. All 10 circled him protectively, as if guarding a friend. The courtyard fell silent. Even the king's jaw dropped. What is the meaning of this?" the king demanded. David looked up calmly and said, "Your Majesty, I served the dogs for only 10 days, and they didn't forget my kindness. I served you for 10 years, and at my first mistake, you forgot everything I ever did." The crowd stood frozen. The king, who had ruled through fear for decades, had no answer. For the first time in years, the king was speechless. He stared at the man who had taught his bloodthirsty beasts to live and unknowingly taught him a lesson no advisor ever dared to speak. The king stood up and waved his hand. "Release him," he said quietly. David was helped out of the cage, and the dogs whimpered as he left. He bowed to the king but said nothing more. That night, the king didn't sleep. He walked the palace halls, replaying David's words. For years he had ruled with cruelty. He forgot loyalty at the first sign of disagreement. He had punished people who had only ever tried to serve him. The next morning, a new law was announced. No man or woman in this kingdom shall be punished without fair hearing, and loyalty shall be rewarded, not erased by one mistake. People were shocked. Some even cried. It was the first time they saw the king change. He called David to his court and said, "I made a mistake. I forgot what it means to be served with honor. From now on, you are no longer my servant, you are my royal advisor." David bowed in gratitude, but he said something that stayed with the king forever. A man's worth is not proven in silence. It is tested when he speaks the truth, even if the truth displeases. Years passed. The king ruled more wisely. His punishments became fair, his heart softer. People began to trust him not because they feared him, but because they believed in him. David's story spread beyond the palace. Travelers spoke of the servant who changed the heart of a king and tamed wild beasts with love. Children were told his story at bedtime. Elders shared it as a lesson. Never forget those who stood with you when no one else did. The 10 wild dogs, they lived out their days in peace, protected by the very man they were once meant to kill. They became a royal symbol not of fear, but of how even the fiercest heart can change with kindness. And as for the king, his final words before his death were written on stone. One loyal servant taught me more than 1,000 battles ever did. Never forget the good someone did for you just because of one mistake. Loyalty is rare, cherish it when you find it.